Hello, my friends and followers of Short Movie Channel. Today's movie begins with our protagonist, Maddie, who we see storming out of her house, extremely angry. The reason? A tow truck is taking her car, and an employee informs her that they're also seizing half of her possessions. All of this is happening because of the debts she can't pay off. From the conversation between the employee and Maddie, we learn that they used to be in a relationship, but now he's furious with her. What he's doing seems like revenge for how she ignored him. In a desperate attempt to improve the situation, Maddie starts speaking to him sweetly, claiming she stayed away from him because she was scared to get closer. She explains that she felt she couldn't live without him. He seems close to believing her, but then he suddenly notices a man walking out of her house shirtless. This makes him realize she was just trying to manipulate him to get her car back. Still, Maddie doesn't give up. She tries lying again, saying the man is her cousin who just returned from Italy. However, he doesn't believe her, takes the car, and leaves. Later, Maddie follows him and sees him parking the car and entering a restaurant. At this point, she tries to unlock her car and take it back, but her attempt fails miserably. The employee catches her and returns to the car. After this incident, Maddie goes to the police station with her lawyer, who tells her that if she doesn't control her temper, she will lose her driver's license and won't be able to get it back. Her license is extremely important to her because she works as an Uber driver. Maddie gets even angrier when her lawyer informs her that she must pay off her debts and taxes by the 1st of September. She vents her frustration, cursing rich men for trying to take over all the homes in her town. After leaving the police station, Maddie heads to her job at a cafe. There, a wealthy customer walks in, and Maddie gets upset and starts arguing with him. Fern, the cafe owner, steps in to apologize to the man, explaining that Maddie isn't feeling well today and isn't herself. Fern then scolds Maddie, telling her that summer isn't the right time to be rude to customers, especially the wealthy ones, because the cafe depends on them. Maddie, however, is still upset and tells Fern that men like this are the reason she's losing her home. Later, Maddie meets her friend Sarah, who works with her and is married to Jam. While they're sitting together, Sarah searches for a cheap car on her phone for Maddie, hoping she can find one to buy and use for work. Suddenly, Sarah stumbles upon a strange advertisement and shows it to Maddie. The ad is about renting a girlfriend for their 19-year-old son, and in return, they'll give her an expensive car. However, there's an important condition in the ad. The applicant must be in her early or mid-20s. Maddie finds the ad fascinating, even though it's bizarre. When Sarah asks how Maddie will handle the age requirement, Maddie confidently says she knows exactly what to do. Maddie's decision is solidified when she consults her lawyer about the idea. He tells her he doesn't see any problem with taking advantage of these rich people, especially since she has nothing to lose. The next day, Maddie goes to the address listed in the ad. When she arrives, she is greeted by Laird and Allison, the parents of Percy, a 19-year-old young man whose parents are searching for a girlfriend for him. Both warmly welcome her and even conduct a small interview, asking her about her age. Here, Maddie surprises them by revealing that she is 32 years old. Their facial expressions immediately change, but Maddie uses her wit to convince them. She explains that young women in their early 20s are often immature and lack the experience she has. She adds that their son needs someone who can interact with him tactfully. Laird and Allison are convinced by her reasoning and begin to tell her about their son Percy. They explain that he is a very shy and introverted young man who hardly ever leaves his room. They are worried about him going to college in this state because they fear he will live his life without any prior relationships, or even friendships. Laird offers Maddie the car advertised in exchange for forming a relationship with Percy. Maddie agrees quickly and asks about Percy's room so she can surprise him. However, Laird refuses, explaining that Percy is not home and that they want to keep this agreement a secret to avoid affecting Percy's mental state. Allison asks Maddie to approach Percy as if by coincidence. They also tell her that Percy volunteers at an animal shelter and suggest that she begin her efforts there. We then shift to Percy, who is shown to be a withdrawn young man. He spends most of his time playing games on his phone and rarely leaves his room, except to go to the animal shelter where he volunteers. At the shelter, Maddie arrives pretending to be looking for a pet to adopt. One of Percy's colleagues offers to help her, but she refuses and insists that Percy assist her instead. Percy is puzzled and asks why she chose him, but she brushes off the question. Percy begins showing her the available dogs, though he doesn't pay much attention to her efforts to catch his eye with playful antics. Eventually, he takes her to his desk to ask her a few questions to ensure she's qualified to adopt a dog. Before he begins, Maddie tells him she's single and unattached, which makes Percy, already a nervous person, even more anxious. He checks his watch and informs her that the shelter is closing, inviting her to return the next day if she's still interested in adopting the dog. Maddie refuses and insists on taking the dog immediately. Percy responds that she doesn't seem suitable for adoption, but Maddie asks him not to rush to judgment and offers to give him a ride home so they can continue talking. When they leave the shelter, Percy sees Maddie's truck and becomes even more uneasy, especially when she insists on putting his bike in the truck and practically forces him to get in. During the ride, Maddie takes Percy's phone to get him to focus on her, but he appears extremely nervous and starts to think she might be kidnapping him. When they arrive at her house, Percy seizes the chance to escape. He pulls out a pepper spray canister and sprays her in the eyes. Maddie begins crying from the pain, unable to see anything. Percy scolds her, accusing her of planning to kidnap him. Maddie tries to convince him that she wasn't trying to kidnap anyone, pointing out that she gave him all her personal information. Percy hesitates for a moment and realizes she's right. He apologizes and tries to fix the situation by using a water hose to wash her eyes, but he accidentally drenches her completely, making things worse. Percy continues apologizing profusely but finally asks why she acted that way toward him. Maddie confesses that she finds him attractive and charming and simply couldn't resist him. Percy is stunned by her admission and, after a moment, asks if they can go out together the next day. Maddie happily agrees. The next day, Maddie is sitting, waiting for Percy, all dressed up and ready. To be fair, Percy also shows up looking sharp, but he's wearing shorts with a suit. Maddie tries not to focus on it too much. After he sits down, Maddie tells Percy that she dreamt about him the night before. Percy responds by saying he's also been dreaming, but his dreams are always weird, full of frightening things. At this point, Maddie feels like there's no hope and suggests he try the beer she ordered for him. But as soon as Percy takes a sip, he throws up immediately. Maddie tells Percy that he's grown up now and heading to college, so he can't keep being scared of everything like this. While they're talking, Maddie's ex-boyfriend shows up. It's obvious their relationship didn't end on good terms because he starts provoking her by talking about his new wife and how much they truly love each other. He also tries to intimidate Percy, but Maddie manages to de-escalate the situation until her ex leaves without causing any trouble. Afterward, Maddie and Percy go for a walk along the beach. Maddie asks Percy to go into the water with her, but, as usual, he's nervous and refuses, saying it's illegal to swim at that time of night, pointing to a sign in front of them. Of course, Maddie doesn't care at all and drags him into the water anyway. As she tries to get closer to him, a group of drunk young men show up and decide to take Maddie and Percy's clothes and walk off with them. When Maddie tries to approach Percy again, he rejects her and tells her he could never date someone he doesn't know. This infuriates Maddie, and she storms out of the water. When Percy comes back and sees her about to leave, he runs after her and asks about his phone. Maddie says she doesn't have it, but Percy knows she's lying. Determined, he climbs onto the hood of her car and demands she give him his phone. Maddie starts driving while Percy clings to the car. Soon, the police show up, making Maddie panic because she's worried they might revoke her license. She manages to escape at the last moment, just before a train passes by. Despite being terrified, both Maddie and Percy end up enjoying the adventure. Percy, especially since it's the first exciting experience he's ever had. Maddie takes Percy back to her place to spend some time alone with him, but unfortunately, all her attempts to get closer to him fail. Percy becomes extremely anxious, breaking out in hives and itching uncontrollably. Instead of getting intimate, Maddie ends up applying ointment to his irritated skin. During this time, the two start sharing personal stories. Percy opens up about why he isolates himself from people. He reveals that it's because of an embarrassing news story about him when he was younger, which said he used to sleep between his parents. This made everyone bully him, and since then, he's avoided dealing with people altogether. Percy apologizes to Maddie for how he's been treating her, and asks if they can go out again. Maddie agrees, and their bond begins to grow stronger. The next day, the two of them go out again, but this time, they're both really happy. Percy puts a finger trap on his and Maddie's fingers. When she gives him a curious look, he tells her, "This is so we can always stay connected." At this moment, she blushes and thinks to herself, "Is this guy actually falling for me?" After that, Maddie opens up about her life, sharing that her mother was sick when she was young. During that time, her father wasn't around because he had been married to someone else before her mother. Since Maddie was born out of wedlock, her father left some money for her and her mother and disappeared completely. On Maddie's graduation day, she decided to write her father a letter. To her surprise, he showed up, but only to return the letter without even opening it. Percy listens to Maddie's story and shares his own experiences. It becomes clear that they're really starting to grow closer. As they're walking one day, Percy runs into his caretaker, who, surprisingly, is a man named Jody, not a woman. When Jody sees Maddie with Percy, he gets upset, accusing her of only being interested in Percy for his money. He even threatens her to stay away from him. Maddie, however, firmly tells him he can't do anything to her and walks away. She goes back home to Sarah and Jim, bringing them a gift for their unborn child, as Sarah is pregnant. Meanwhile, Percy is getting ready for a date with Maddie. He chooses a formal suit, while Maddie carefully picks out a dress, standing in front of the mirror with full focus. They meet up, and Percy tells Maddie that he's decided to leave his phone at home for the night so he can spend the entire evening with her. This makes Maddie incredibly happy. They head to a restaurant, where Maddie notices a piano behind Percy. She asks him to play it. Even though he's hesitant, she insists. Percy eventually gets up and plays, impressing everyone with his talent. Later, they run into Natalie, Percy's old schoolmate, at the restaurant. Maddie's behavior starts to change. She seems jealous and her responses become sharp. Percy notices and feels hurt. He tells Maddie he's going to spend the rest of the graduation party with Natalie. Maddie follows him to the party, feeling out of place as the students' looks remind her of the age gap between her and Percy. When she asks about him, some girls tell her he's upstairs with Natalie. Maddie rushes up and finds Percy under the influence of drugs. She takes him to the bathroom to help him recover. A big commotion erupts at the party, and the two leave together. It's obvious how close they're becoming. One day, Percy announces to his family that he's decided to learn how to drive and has a new girlfriend. His parents are happy with Maddie's influence on him. However, their happiness doesn't last long because Percy also announces that he's decided not to go to college, a decision he won't reconsider. Percy takes his new car for a drive, while his parents, Laird and Allison, call Maddie to confront her about what she's done. During the drive, Percy notices his dad's Bluetooth recorder is connected to the car. He overhears the entire conversation between Maddie and his parents, which leaves him deeply hurt. Feeling betrayed, Percy decides to invite Maddie over for lunch at his house. His parents are nervous, fearing Percy has discovered the truth. Later, Percy and his friend vandalize Maddie's car in anger. He confronts her, expressing his disappointment, and telling her he had hoped their relationship was real. Maddie, shocked that Percy knows the truth, insists that her feelings were genuine. She tells him that he knows things about her no one else does. But Percy doesn't believe her, and tells her to go home and wait for his father to apologize. Maddie feels devastated and falls into a deep depression. Determined to move forward, Maddie starts working on her broken car to raise enough money to save her house. Eventually, she succeeds, but Sarah and Jim reveal they've decided to leave town because they can't live with Jim's family after their baby is born. They encourage Maddie to do what truly makes her happy, not just settle for getting her house back. Inspired by their words, Maddie puts the house up for sale and decides to start fresh. She burns all the letters she had written to her father and goes to find Percy. She locates him at one of his friends' parties. When she tries to talk to him, he refuses to listen. Maddie climbs onto the car hood, mirroring what Percy once did, but ends up getting hurt. Percy rushes to help her, and Maddie admits everything she's done wrong. Percy tells her he's not mad anymore, and shares that he's decided to go away to study but promises to return. In the end, Maddie sells the house to Sarah and Jim at a low price, saying it's what truly makes her happy. The next day, she drives Percy to the airport. Before he leaves, Maddie asks if he's ready. Percy looks at her and says, "I'm ready." Maddie drives away, ready to start a new chapter in her life. And that's the end of today's movie. I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you loved the video.